Okay, I'd like to extend my thanks to everybody who has joined us remotely. I understand there's quite a few of you. I will ask you in a moment's notice to, we will go round and just have everybody introduce themselves so that we know who is attending the meeting. The way that we're going to run things is that we will do the formal part of this EGM first, which is the process of running through the 3 proposals and feeding back to you what we've got on the proxies on that. We then will have an opportunity at the end of the meeting to have a slightly more informal session should anybody wish to participate in that, because it's not that often we get together, certainly not that we often get together like this. Okay. Are we going to ask people to come round and introduce? Yeah. So it would be really good, Paul, if you pick this up now. If all those who have come in online would simply one at a time just like to introduce themselves by name, by their club or their league, just so that we have a good feel for who is on the call.
So I'll suggest that actually I call out the name and they just unmute and introduce themselves.
Is that okay with everybody? Okay, let's do that.
Okay, so let's start with Jen.
Hi.
Jen.
Hi, Jen Athill from Broomwood.
Great, and then Peter Barnes.
Peter Barnes from the Northwest Division.
Great, good to see you, Peter.
Then we have
Andrew, James.
Yeah.
So Alejandro.
Hi guys, this is Alejandro from the Youth Division.
Great, good to see you.
Andrew Morton.
Hello, I'm Andrew Morton, South East Division and Parkwood Rangers Football Club.
Great, cheers Andrew.
And then we have Drew.
Hello, Drew Patterson here, London FA non-exec director.
Right, then we have Eddie Webb.
Sorry, did you say Eddie Webb, Paul?
That's right, I did, yeah.
I didn't quite hear that. Sorry. Yeah, Eddie Webb, Northwest Division.
Right, thank you, Eddie. Then Gavin, so Gavin Davies.
Yeah, hi, Gavin Davies, Parkwood Rangers Club Secretary.
And then Ian Burke.
Hi everyone, it's Ian Burke from the London Youth Division Chair.
Right, Jeff Pettit.
Hello, I'm Jeff Pettit. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Then Joe Hind.
Hi, yeah, I'm Joe Hind. I guess I'm part of the South East, and I'm on the Women and Girls Advisory Committee as well.
Hi, Joe. Now we then have a descriptor which is Juventus Year-Round Training London. So I don't know the name, I'm afraid, but if you want to introduce yourself, you're very welcome.
Hi, it's Louisa Raimondo, ELA Football Club and Regent's Park Youth League.
Lovely.
Great, nice to meet you, Louise.
Thank you.
Ali.
Hi there, Ali Morgan, non-exec finance director. Hi everyone.
And then Nahimul from Wapping.
Oh, hi, from South East Division, council member and from Wapping Football Club. Thanks.
Okay. Then we have Sam from AFC Wimbledon.
Yeah, Sam Abdul, club secretary, AFC Wimbledon Girls.
Fantastic. And then Vivian.
Vivian Ayala, non-exec director of football.
Lovely. Now we have one other guest who's about to join us, which is Duncan Hart, our council member. So I'll be admitting Duncan in a second. We also have somebody who's joined us via conference call, so I can't see the name. So I don't know if they want to introduce themselves. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Daniel Masquer from Dulwich Village. I don't know if you called me. I was someone was chatting to me. Sorry.
Got you. No problem. And it looks like you're moving around in a taxi, Daniel. So well done for joining the meeting on the move.
Very, very impressive.
Very good. Okay, and we've got Duncan Hart and then Abigail from Girls United, who are also going to be joining us shortly.
Okay, cool. Okay, can everybody see and hear what's going on? I just wanted to check that. And is everybody happy that for me to proceed with the meeting? You can wave at Paul. Just put your thumb up. Yeah, that'd be good. Okay. So the way that we're going to do this is that I'm going to ask Simon now to run us through in a non-legal, not in non-legalese, the legal aspects of what we're going to be doing here, so that everybody understands why we are doing what we are doing in these most unusual circumstances. We're not doing this because we're bored or we're, you know, the lockdown's wearing thin. We are actually, in a way, slightly trapped by our own articles, by the completely unusual circumstances. And I asked Simon if he would just take a few minutes to explain to people what our articles make us do, and therefore why we need to make some sort of alteration to them in the short term, just so we can navigate our way past COVID, COVID-1 as we're in now, and no doubt COVID-2 when it turns up next winter. But the important thing is that we can't put ourselves in a position where we're unintentionally acting illegally simply because we didn't anticipate what the articles didn't anticipate with COVID. So I'm going to move on to Simon now and ask you to take this on, Simon.
Great. Thank you very much, James. I'll just wait for Paul to confirm that you can see me.
Great.
Good. James, thank you. Thank you very much, Paul, for all your work. Thank you, Ian, for joining us. And thank you, everybody else out there. Really good to have you with us. I can't see you, but I'm afraid you can see me. And I'll make this as short as possible, but so bear with me a bit, because I want everybody to be absolutely comfortable that we have, James, checked everything and we're doing everything by the law as we are at the moment allowed to do, so that we can make legal decisions and get on with the real business of the LFA. Everybody was sent papers for today, which set out basically the core business, which is 3 resolutions. And I'll come to that in a second. And when we come to that, I think you or Paul will ask people to sort of have them in front of them if you want to make sure we know what they say. So the 3 things that govern us: we're a company, so we're governed by the Companies Act 2006, which sets out all the rules for general meetings by law. We're then governed by our articles, which we last adapted in January last year. But as James, you said, not for a minute thinking that June would be a problem month for having the AGM, or that the summer would be a problem time this year for electing our new council. We just never saw this coming. And then we're governed, and I won't even open it, but I will just show you, we're governed by this, which is the coronavirus bill, now an act, which gave government lots of powers to tell us what to do and has regulations and guidance. So at the moment, as of this minute, we are required every year to have our annual general meeting in June. That's what our articles say as of this minute. And we also, in our articles, have set out the timetable for electing our council, for asking people to put their names forward for council, for the nomination and recruitment process, to put names up to the board, for the board to appoint them, and for the council to choose its 4 directors. And we're governed now by our articles. And that process starts, and it's a 3-year process. We have a 3-year cycle for elections, and it starts at the end of this month. We are required to have that process starting at the end of May, unless by the end of January this year the directors had changed it. Well, the end of January, we didn't see this coming then either, so we didn't change it by the end of January. So we are stuck at the moment that end of this month we have to have nominations in for council. Because of the Coronavirus Act, because people aren't allowed to make unnecessary travel, and those were on the road signs I saw today, because people aren't meant to work away from home unless they can't avoid that, because of the limitations on meetings of people, because of people over 70 and others have to stay indoors, we decided it would be inappropriate to have the AGM in June. In theory, we could have it, but we would have to have it sort of like this, with only 2 or 3 directors there plus Paul, everybody else connected virtually. And of course, for people who don't have good connectivity, that's not very helpful. It wouldn't be a very healthy AGM or very suitable AGM. So the board decided actually unanimously that we would ask members to agree to give us the flexibility to have our AGM later in the year, between the beginning of July and the end of December. And when we come to resolution 1, that's what you'll be asked to agree to. The condition we gave ourselves in the resolution is that we give every member 60 days warning when the AGM is, so that nobody is going to be caught short, as it were. Secondly, we decided that it would be impractical and unfair to end the term of office of the current council members, people who are on the call like Drew and others, well, not Drew, Drew's on the board now, but people on the council, because we weren't able to have our council meeting in March. We're not able to have a normal council meeting in June, and therefore the current council is never able to finish its proper term of office. And we can't easily go through the process of getting nominations in, having a nominations committee meet, having the board meeting, having interviews with people. I mean, it's just very, very impractical. And so the second thing the board decided is that it would be much better to knock back the council cycle to start in the second half of the year. And the second resolution is about giving us that flexibility. The third thing is that, James, as you indicated, we absolutely don't know what the regulations are going to be in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, 9 months' time. And what we decided we didn't want to do was to have to call an EGM every 3 months to bother you good people for a formal process when we could find an easier way of managing our business. So we've asked to do what bluntly the government asked Parliament to allow it to do, which was to give us unusually and only for a limited period the powers to act on behalf of the members. It's a maximum of 2 years, and it can only be done when we are making decisions that we judge are because of COVID-19 or because of other events beyond the control of the LFA. But to give the board exceptionally, the current board and the new board, which will have taken over by the next year, the powers to make the decisions for the members. And it's time limited, and in 2 years' time, everything will return to normal. So those are the 3 proposals. The only way under our articles we can change any of those things is by having an extraordinary general meeting, which is the reason for the meeting. If we pass each and every one of the 3 resolutions, they come into effect immediately today. Bluntly, if we didn't pass them, we would be left with having to have an AGM next month in the circumstances I've set out. We would then act, James, as you rightly said, be acting illegally in relation to the council process. We could not comply with our articles. And so we would be sort of willingly walking into a dead end, a cul-de-sac, where we could be challenged, and all the council elections could be challenged. And we don't want to do that. We've asked for the 2-year special powers, if you like, to avoid us having to trouble you. So that's the proposal. Last few things, James, and then I'll hand back to you to go through the process. So what do we have to do this lawfully? We have to properly call the meeting. The board can call extraordinary general meetings, and the board unanimously agreed it wished to do so and made that decision. Special resolutions are the mechanism of putting a proposal to an extraordinary general meeting, and the board has agreed to 3 of those which are before you. We have to give 21 days notice of the meeting. We have to do that by post, which was done by Paul and his team to everybody, all members, unless you had said you could accept it by email before, in which case you can get it electronically. And we've complied with that. I got mine through the post as everybody else did. It has to tell you the name and the place of the meeting, the nature of the business. This is probably the sort of technically the thing we worried about most. We need, for the transaction of business at an extraordinary general meeting, a quorum of 25 people. Our articles and the law of the land say that you count your quorum by adding the numbers of the people present and the numbers of people who have given proxies to the people present. That is the total of people, therefore, technically, actually in law, participating in this meeting. So it's Ian, James and me, and then everybody else who has given a proxy makes up the total. We'll hear perhaps now Paul can tell us what the figures are, the total of the proxies. We'll cast votes later, but I think Paul has a total of the number of proxy votes that were in by the deadline, which was noon today.
56.
So 56 proxy votes. So there are 3 of us plus 56. So there's 59 of us at this meeting in law. Without in any way underestimating the value of everybody watching, you are absolutely part of the meeting. You are absolutely entitled to be called by James to speak and to participate. Technically, I apologise, I can't do anything about it, but you're not part of the quorum just by being on the call. And that's the way the law is. And nor by law yet, or by our articles yet, can you vote, as it were, from your living room or your office or your car or your taxi in the call. That's not yet permitted. We can't take amendments to the special resolutions under our articles, and we can't have amendments voted on. The way we'll cast the votes, so you can see that it's all being above board, is that we'll do it by show of hands, the 3 of us here, and then we will each declare the proxies given to us, how many, and whether people are in favour or against or abstaining on the resolution, so that that can be tallied by Paul and announced by James. And the last thing that is slightly bizarre, I have to tell you, but is the law. In order to change articles of our association, we need 3/4, a majority of not less than 3/4 of those who are the relevant people for voting. And don't ask me why we didn't spot this or we never thought of it, but technically the people who are entitled to vote and whose votes count for the 3/4 of the majority are Ian and James and me. So and we know we're all going to vote in favour because it's our motion, but actually it's 3/4 of 3 or more. I can assure you that will happen. I apologise that you can't all be counted like a great army of angels in that. And there are some thoughts, I think, James and Paul, in the light of this. Well, we're going to review our articles anyway. We may just want to do as much as we can to open it out to people who participate virtually in future. The last thing to say about the process is we changed our articles also in the last couple of years to say that if there are going to be changes to our articles, we have to consult with the board, the council and members. And Paul, in a minute or two, will just explain how we did that and briefly and just report back on the responses to the consultation, because we obviously don't want to bounce changes on people. Last thing, COVID-19. We held our last EGM in London South Bank University, where I'm privileged to be the Chancellor. In a room, everybody could come. We had food and drink before and afterwards. We're not allowed to do that. We have to limit our attendance to the minimum. 2 is the minimum that company's law allows for a meeting, a company meeting, to directors minimum. We have to keep appropriate distance. We have to avoid any of the breaches and rules. And to satisfy myself as well as James and Paul, I checked what other companies were doing, because there were other AGMs up and down the country. I have, I think, 8 shares worth £1 each in Lloyds Bank, and they invite me to their annual general meeting, which was the other day in Edinburgh. I have the papers here. They were having exactly the same process. In fact, theirs wasn't nearly as good as ours, because A, they were going to have 4 people at the meeting. B, they were going to have proxies, but they weren't asking anybody to join virtually, and they just said, you can't turn up, and if you turn up, we won't let you in. So other companies, and I've read all the law about it, are having to deal with it in this sort of slightly bizarre way, James, but it's within the law. So I hope that explains everything to everybody. I'm grateful to people for bearing with us. And now perhaps if I can hand to Paul, and he can take the camera back, and then he'll give a summary of the results of the consultation. And he has been asked to report on one specific set of concerns and our response. Thank you, Paul, very much.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Thank you, James. Hello, everyone. So Short bit from me, I think, just to give a little bit of a summary of the consultation we've been through, and then just to report back a couple of the concerns that have been raised with us and how we've responded to them. So I think firstly, just to explain the consultation process here. So firstly, this is a set of resolutions that are unanimously recommended by the board, voted on by the board members, and then that was put out for consultation to our London FA Council. So 17th of April, a very detailed summary and then a briefing paper was sent out to the council with the opportunity for council members to respond. We had a reasonable number of responses, all overwhelmingly expressing support for the approach that we were proposing. There were a couple of questions on the timeline and whether we should look at a slightly longer timeline. And I think our response to that was that essentially Special Resolution 3 does give us a little bit more flexibility than that, and covered that point. The postal and the email notice then on the 1st of May went out to the members, so quite comfortably within the 21-day period. And we've had a very, very positive response to that with the large number of proxy forms that I've just read out. We've had one member, two council members actually, George and Louise Dorling, raising a couple of concerns. So let me just take you through those. So the first one is on the consultation process that we've run. So I've just taken you through the steps for consultation and a summary of the main feedback there. The second query was about whether you were able to vote against the resolutions, and we've responded and been very clear that the proxy form does allow for that. And if you look carefully at your proxy forms, in the notes it explains exactly how you can give instructions to the person who acts as your proxy and how you can vote against that. The final query was about why we were not considering a postal vote and why we weren't having a postal vote, which is a very good question. And as Simon has just explained, it is not permitted within our articles. Voting is only permitted through proxy or by face-to-face, and that's certainly something that we will look at and consider going forward. But if we had allowed postal votes at this stage, then essentially we would have been in breach of our articles. So I think that covers the main points, Simon. So I'll now hand over, if it's okay, to James, who will take us through the special resolutions.
Just checking if people have any questions, James.
Sure. Okay, so just before we move on to the special resolutions, is that okay? Yeah. Cheers. Good. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Just before we move on to special resolution, would anybody like to ask any questions of what Simon was explaining in terms of why we're doing what we're doing? And is there anybody who would like any clarity in understanding why we have to do what we're doing? So now is a good time. Please just hold your hand up for Paul if you want to ask a question. Yeah.
So you can unmute and ask the question, or feel free to just post the question on the chat forum on the right-hand side.
Okay, we good?
Nothing coming through.
Okay, good. Well, no.
Sorry, actually. So Gavin's got a question, I think. So if you just unmute and ask your question, Gavin, that would be great.
Hi, Paul. Obviously, I do a lot of this stuff myself, and it's not really a question. It's more the fact that I think from a member club, we should be telling you well done, because I think the way you've navigated this through the COVID crisis, I think, and the presentation that was just had is the only right and proper way to do this. And well done to all of you for making this happen, actually, because there is a real risk that you were going to be in breach of the law, in my opinion, and I think actually credit should be given to you guys for actually managing to achieve what you've achieved here, because in the crisis, it's a difficult ask to suddenly do this at a drop of a hat when it's not built into your constitution to do it. So from me, as a member club, I'd just like to say well done to all of you for actually managing to do what you're doing, and these proposals sit well with me.
That's really very kind of you, Gavin. Thank you very much for saying that. On behalf of the board, I would also like to thank Paul and the team for doing a very difficult job in a difficult time and making it look very effortless. Because actually it's very easy to get in a tangle over this and to find that you're not achieving where you want to go. So it's very kind of you, and thank you very much for saying that. Is there anybody else who would like to ask anything else just before I move on to the special resolutions? Okay. So have you had a chance to get your special resolution in front of you? So I'm just going to ask Paul, without moving the camera around here, to read out what the new resolution looks like. Is that okay?
Absolutely fine.
Rather than do it in cut and paste. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I'll just read through the special resolution. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Do you want me to turn this to? No, okay, just fine. Okay.
So special resolution 1. So London FA agrees that because of the COVID-19 global pandemic in 2020, the following amendments are made to London FA Article 14. So after in June of each calendar year in line 1, we add except in 2020 where the AGM may be held in any month from July to December inclusive, and in 2021 when the AGM may be held in any month from April to December inclusive. Point 2, after at least 14 days notice in line 3, add in 2020 and 2021, the time, date, month and place in which the AGM is to be held will be decided by the Board of Directors. The London FA Chair or Chief Executive shall give 60 days notice to London FA Council members and London FA members of the time, date, month and place of the AGM in each of these 2 years. For clarity, the amended Article 14 would then read, and you can see in your papers that the additional words that we've put in are in italics. So Article 14, an annual general meeting to be held in June of each calendar year, except in 2020 when the AGM may be held in any month from July to December 2020 inclusive, and in 2021 when the AGM may be held in any month from April to December inclusive. And an extraordinary general meeting called for the passing of a special resolution should be called by at least 21 days clear notice, and every other extraordinary general meeting should be called by at least 14 days notice. Then again in italics, in 2020 and 21, the time, date, month and place at which the AGM will be held will be decided by the London FA Board of Directors, and the London FA Chair or Chief Executive shall give at least 60 days notice to London FA Council members and London FA members of the time, date, month and place of the AGM in each of these 2 years. That's essentially the changes to the AGM date and the change in the notice period for the AGM.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Is everybody happy with that? So I'm going to, on behalf of the board, propose special resolution 1, and I'm going to ask Ian if he would like to second that.
Good evening, everybody. I've been very quiet so far.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm really just here to keep the other 2 in order, but I'm very pleased to second the proposal.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ian. Okay.
You now need to ask if there are any questions about this resolution.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions they would like to ask about special resolution 1? Paul, are they on your screen? Okay. Is there anybody who would like to speak either in favour of special resolution 1 or against special resolution 1?
So no desire for anybody to make any
Okay.
comments.
So I'm now going to put special resolution 1 to the vote, and to declare in favour on behalf of myself and my proxies, I will vote for it, and I have a total of 29 proxies which I've been asked to represent, which all support resolution 1. Okay, can I ask Ian to let me know what his vote is and what his proxies say.
My vote also is in favour, and I have 14 proxies who will also vote in favour.
Okay, thank you, Ian. And can I ask Simon to let me know what his proxies say?
James, thank you very much. My vote is in favour, and I have 13 proxies, also all in favour.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Paul to total that up for us and let us know what the outcome is.
Okay, so we've got 56 proxies and then the 3 votes from yourselves all in favour, so that's 59. So that's 59 votes in total, all in favour, so essentially the resolution is carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Article 14 has therefore been amended as set out in Special Resolution 1. Okay, would anybody like to ask any questions before I move on to Special Resolution 2? Okay, cool. So once again, I'm just going to ask Paul to run through, just for absolute clarity, what Special Resolution says. I'm just wondering, Paul, if it's sufficient to read Article 37 here, the fine, or would you like to read the whole thing? Simon, what does...
Paul could just read the amended article if it was amended to go through to short. If he's
Very,
happy,
yeah. Very,
Is that okay for everyone? I'm going to ask Paul just to read the amended Article 37 so that you can see the sense of it.
Excellent. And again, so people understand, the amended words are in italics, so it's very clear for people in the papers. So Article 37 will now read: nominations for the council shall be sought every 3 years commencing from the first election year 2002 and shall be received in each election year before 31st of May in that year, unless January 31st in the same year the Board of Directors decides otherwise and informs the council of the said date. And then in italics, except that in 2020 nominations shall be received before 30th of November 2020. Council members shall take office from July the 1st in each election year, except in 2020 when council members shall take office from a date before December 31st 2020 to be decided by the Board of Directors, and shall serve for 3 years until June 30th, 3 years later, except for those council members who take office in 2020 who shall serve for the remainder of the period until June 30th, 2023, and unless they resign or otherwise cease to hold the office beforehand. So that will be the new article, should members vote in favour of this resolution.
So, Ian?
Okay, my job this time to propose it. So you've heard the wording, so I'd like to propose, which of course I'm in favour of.
Thank you very much. Simon, can I ask if you'll second it?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very happy to second it, and perhaps I have one sentence of clarification. We're trying to make sure in this that council members who will be elected, James, by the end of this year, clearly have the rest of their full term in office, and they will stay in office till the summer of 2023.
Yeah.
So they get a slightly shorter term, but it's the best we can do in all the circumstances. But I'm very happy to second Ian's proposal.
Okay, thank you. Just before we move, can I ask if there are any questions that anybody would like to ask before we move to the vote? Okay.
So I think Duncan is just putting his hand up here. So if you just want to unmute your microphone, Duncan.
Yes, I would just like to ask, have you any thoughts about the process for undertaking this? Obviously, we are restricting ourselves to undertake this by the end of November, I think it was. And what happens if we are still not able to meet as a group by that time? Can the council election be undertaken virtually or not?
I'll take that. Okay, Duncan, good question. I think, if I'm completely honest, we're taking this 1 month at a time because it changes every morning. Our intention here is to be doing things in, and I use the word in inverted commas, a normal way before the end of the year, and hopefully we can. We will review this on a regular monthly basis, and we will keep council and board and council fully informed as we unfold this. what your question is an excellent question. What we're doing today is we're allowing the board the flexibility to be able to inform the council of the best way to navigate these most unusual circumstances without being inappropriately constrained by perfectly well-meaning and perfectly well set articles, which are no longer relevant to the current situation. So I'm hoping we'll be doing everything normally by the end of the year. We've given ourselves enough time to do it, but we will keep you advised as this thing unfolds. Is that any use to you as an answer?
Well, I was just wondering if there's anything within the current articles which would prevent the council election to happen virtually or not, or would we have to do something similar to like this, i.e. make our decisions in advance and provide proxy votes in advance of a meeting? Obviously, we would hope that we could meet as a group, but it is quite possible that government recommendations wouldn't allow group meetings of over, say, 50 people by the end of November.
Well, I think it's, again, excellent question. I'm looking at Simon, who says that we have complete flexibility. I think as part of the consultation, we'll look at some of the questions that were raised earlier about postal votes and things, so that people are perfectly happy that whatever system we adopt is the best system. So in the event that we couldn't have, for want of a better description, a congregational meeting, as you've described, we'd have a process where we can vote in any case.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Cheers, Duncan. Thanks for the question. Okay. All right. So where am I up to? Would anybody like to speak either for or against Special Resolution 2? Okay. Okay, so I'm now going to put this to the vote. Again, I think I'm going to lead this off. I vote in favour of Special Resolution 2. I have 29 proxies I'm representing, and again, I have 29 votes in favour of Special Resolution 2.
Okay,
Ian?
and again, I also am in favour of the vote, and so will my 14 proxies.
James, thank you. I also support Special Resolution 2 and have 13 proxies to add into the equation. All in favour.
Thanks. Okay, Paul, can you just round it up for us?
Yeah, that's right. So we've got, I think we've got 56 proxies and then 3 votes, so up to 59, all in favour, so carried unanimously.
Okay, so Article 37 has therefore been amended as set out in Special Resolution 2. Okay, so we're going to move on to Special Resolution 3. Have you all got your papers in front of you? Is there anything anybody would like to ask us about that just before we kick it off? Okay, I'm going to ask Paul, as before, to run through and just read us what the new, well, actually, I'm going to ask Paul to read the paragraph before, because I think this one needs a little explaining. Because I had a long phone call last night with Graham Etchell, who's one of the senior VPs, and he asked me, does this give the board some sort of unlimited power? Sort of, he didn't use a la Donald Trump, but I think that's what he was asking. And I said, no, Graham, who is one of the most knowledgeable members of the council, I said, this is simply to allow us to respond and react to COVID-related actions, because there's always the possibility that we'll have wave 2 of this. There's always a possibility they won't find a solution. And it's simply so that we don't have to convene these EGMs and do all of this paperwork at 3 monthly intervals. So that was a very well asked question, and it's to give you comfort that we're doing this to respond to COVID. So, Paul, can I ask you to read item 1 and then the new Article 11A?
Right. So special Resolution 3. So London FA agrees that because of the COVID-19 global pandemic, the London FA will give powers to the Board of Directors as follows. So to prevent the need for one or more further emergency general meetings to deal with further consequences of this or other matters beyond the control of the London FA for the period from May 2020 until the London FA AGM in 2022 only, The London FA will give powers to the board exceptionally and only for a period from the EGM in May until the AGM in 2022 to take further decisions which are within the law of the land and which would otherwise need the agreement of council and/or of members at an AGM or an EGM, and which the board of directors judge to be necessary either as a result of the coronavirus pandemic or as a result of other events beyond the control of the London FA. This requires a new Article 11A to be inserted as follows, and I'll read quickly through that Article 11A. All the Articles of Association London FA shall, for the period from London FA EGM in May 2020 until the London FA AGM in 2022, be subject to the following qualification, namely that for the period from May 2020 until the London FA AGM in 2022 only, the London FA gives all necessary powers to the Board of Directors exceptionally and for this period only to take any further decisions which are within the law of the land and which would otherwise need agreement of council and/or of members at an AGM or an EGM, and which the London FA Board of Directors judge to be necessary either as a result of the coronavirus pandemic or as a result of other events which are beyond the control of the London FA.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. So, would anybody like to ask any questions about Special Resolution 3? You have anyone on there?
So nothing coming through the screen here.
Oh.
So I've got just one question. I think a hand up from you, Ali. Is that right?
Yeah, by accident. So please disregard it.
Okay. You're just scratching your ear. Yeah, I know. Okay. Would anybody like to speak either in favour of or against Special Resolution 3?
Shall I just say a word, James,
yes.
just about really to deal with Graham Etchell's point to you. We thought about this very carefully, and people may know I have a, I talk about this often, I have a political hinterland, which means I'm instinctively against giving small groups of people lots of power over large groups of people. And therefore we have written this very carefully on advice, and it is only possible for us to do anything else that is outside the articles if, firstly, it's within the 2 years, next 2 years. So at the end of that, powers will go back to members. Secondly, we have to, at a board level, judge them to be necessary, and only if they're as a result of the coronavirus pandemic or other events beyond our control.
Yeah.
So if we did something that members thought was aberrant or unacceptable, and we couldn't show that it was because of things outside our control, we'd be in trouble and they would have to be undone. So it is as tight as possible, but it's for the reasons you said. It's to avoid us having to trouble people with extraordinary general meetings on a regular basis as we adapt. But it doesn't prevent us doing what Duncan asked earlier, which is being sensible and intelligent about how we use our current articles to hold meetings virtually. I expect we may have a board meeting virtually next month. We may well need a council meeting virtually. If we want to do postal votes, we can. But it's absolutely meant to be limited period only because of these extraordinary circumstances.
Okay.
That's helpful to reassure everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. So I don't get any executive powers yet. But so now if everyone's okay with that, I'm going to ask Simon if you'd like to propose this.
Thank you very much. Yes, I propose it, please, and I will obviously declare my vote. And again, I have 13 votes here, which are proxy votes, which I wish to cast on their behalf in favour of Special Resolution 3.
Okay, can I ask Ian?
I'm very happy to second it, and again, my 14 proxy votes will come with me.
Great, thank you. And I would be very happy to support this with my vote and my 29 proxy votes too. So I'm going to ask Paul if he'll tally up for us.
Yeah, so as before, so we've got 29 votes from yourself, James, 13 from Simon, 14 from Ian, so that's 56 proxy votes. 3 of you have your individual votes, so that's 59 in total, all in favour, so again carried unanimously.
Okay, so the new Article 11A has been agreed as set out in Special Resolution 3. Okay. So I'd just like to ask anyone if they have any further questions before we wrap up this EGM. So this is your opportunity to hold your hand up one more time for Paul.
So note, James, that I'll give, I think, a very general overview.
Great.
That's outside of the matters we've dealt with immediately so far. General kind of London.
Do you want this back?
Yeah. Very good. Okay, so just a final call. So are there any queries directly related to any of the 3 special resolutions that we've just passed? Resolutions, not revolutions. Great. Okay, so no questions coming in. So I think we move now to slightly more informal part of the meeting. And
next steps.
Absolutely. So in fact, before that, let me just explain the next steps for here. So the first thing I'll do is a full report, so a set of notes and a full report back to our members and back to council. I think the next point from there will be the board to look at the timeline that we've published in the papers and to review that, consider it in light of some of the comments this afternoon, for example, Duncan's comments. And then I think it will be a full consultation with council about the specific timescales and the process that we run through. So we've now made the changes we need to be compliant with our articles. We will go back, we'll review the process for board and council appointments from here and come back and consult with the council on that before we move forward with it.
Do you want to give a hint about AGM thinking date?
Which was in October.
Yeah,
so and just to give you a bit of an indication, and I think this was included in the timeline, so we're considering an AGM for the members around October time, so that fits best with the timeline that we've published so far, and essentially just moves the existing AGM back by a quarter, and the rest of the timescales fit quite well. So that is the date that we're considering at the moment, very early October, but that'll be part of the communication back out to the council.
Okay. Close the EGM formally.
Yeah.
We'll open up the informal.
I need cameraman. Sorry, sorry, Paul, for asking to come back and forth. Okay, so I'd just like to formally close the EGM. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thank you also to everybody who sent their proxies in, which is overwhelming response and very, very helpful. And it's great to have been able to execute this with so much cooperation. Thank you very much. Duncan, thank you very much for your very pressing questions about the voting process. We will have a look at that and come back to you all on it. And it's just remains for me to thank Paul for teeing everything up, Simon for advising us, Ian for attending, and to thank you all who dialed in for helping us through this whole process. I'm now going to bring the EGM to a formal close, but I would like to offer anyone who would like to the opportunity to have a more informal meeting if they would like to do so. So whilst I bring the EGM to a close, for those of you who have had enough, you can get yourself ready for England-Germany 96, which is on in about half an hour. But for anybody who would like to talk or talk about things, please stay on the line. Okay.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, James. And I'll do a very, very brief overview just of a couple of things that are going on at London FA. And very happy for myself or anybody else here to take any questions from you. So if I just kind of cover some of the items that are probably useful for you as members to know. So I think the first thing, just to explain the office arrangements. So we've taken the decision and very clearly communicated out to our members to furlough a number of staff. So we have at the moment, we have 11 London FA staff who are currently on furlough, and we have 10 London FA staff who are currently still in the business working. That includes myself and the senior management team, and we're spreading our work at the moment across those 10 members members of staff. We felt that was probably the best balance between being financially prudent, given that our income has obviously been affected quite heavily because of grassroots football being suspended, but at the same time being able to continue with really crucial bits of work that are really important to set us all up for next season. So we've got 10 members of staff full-time in the office. We've changed slightly our customer service arrangements, so we've moved to an email management system, which is easier and a little bit more efficient to manage than the old phone operating system. So on the website, you will have a set of shared email addresses, and we'd ask members, if you want to get in touch, to use those shared email addresses. That essentially gets monitored via a system called Freshdesk, with ticketing, with clear timelines for responses, etc. So we can track very carefully the queries that are coming in. And it also allows me and the senior management team to ensure that we're dealing effectively with those queries and getting some customer service statistics from that. I think just a point, we've just been joined by somebody who might want to mute their microphone just because we've got a little bit of background noise. That's great. So as I say,
is now exiting.
Some changes from a customer service point of view. Also, to help members, we've got a very extensive set of FAQs on our website, and the majority of quite general questions can be answered through that FAQ section. We also have a very specific FAQ section related to coronavirus, so there's those two options. So those are the customer service arrangements that we've been putting in place for our members, just to make sure that we can still be responsive, even though we've got a reduced staff up and running at the moment. The second thing I just want to bring your attention to is we've done a lot of work on our club and league support package. Again, you will see that on our website. It's very clearly on the homepage. Under the banner, you'll see the club and league COVID support package. And it's essentially a portal that gives a lot of information for support to clubs and leagues at this particular point. It responds to the questionnaire that we ran, which identified some of the big concerns for clubs. Financial matters are at the top of that list, and especially financial issues around the booking of the pitches and the cost of facilities and the cost of a workforce, in particular a self-employed workforce like coaches. So you'll see a lot of advice and guidance under the funding section of that page, which should be extremely useful for the members. The team in the office are also on hand to help any members who are thinking of making an application, for example, through the Pitch Preparation Fund, which has just been launched by the Football Foundation, or Sport England's emergency funding. The team are on hand to help and support any club or any league that's interested in going through that process. So do continue to publicise that, and that portal essentially is in place and there for our clubs and our members to use. The final thing I just want to obviously remind you of, and we've sent a lot of communications out about this. So we opened affiliation last week. We were responding there to the call again through the questionnaire from clubs that we open affiliation as early as possible. I think for people, affiliation is an administrative pain. People have a little bit more time at the moment, and they were very keen that they could get some of the administrative duties like affiliation out the way. So we've opened affiliation early. We've had a very strong response to that. So we've got over 200 clubs in the system now already affiliating, which I think will give us the opportunity to get ourselves in a really good position for next season. The other advantage, of course, you can take advantage of some of the significant discounts in place. So there's a significantly reduced per team affiliation fee for each team. So that's a £15 reduction. And certainly for youth clubs, that makes the per team affiliation fee free. We've also been able to negotiate a really significant discount on our personal accident insurance with our provider SportsGuard. So 16.6% discount there. Now, both of those both of those discounts are applied to the per team, and it is the per team costs generally that are highest for clubs, especially the larger clubs that have really significant numbers of teams. We've also been able to keep our costs anywhere else level, and that's been the case for the last 4 years. So we think we've got a good financial package in place for our clubs and for our leagues here. The other final thing that's very important on affiliation, because we know these financial matters are sensitive for people at the moment, there's a lot of flexibility about when you make the payment. So essentially you can go through all of the administration at the moment. We submit an invoice you don't need to pay that invoice until the end of August. So that allows clubs to get a much better idea of season start dates, collect membership fees, etc. There is no pressure on clubs to make payments right at this moment, and we're giving a lot of flexibility. We'll actually review that deadline date as we go along, and if it looks like the season might be further interrupted, then we'd extend that deadline for people. So that's our plans on affiliation. We've got the club and league support package in place, and of course I've just explained the office arrangements. So if anybody has any queries or anything that they would like to say, very happy to talk that through.
I have a couple of questions if nobody else does.
Go for it, Duncan.
Firstly, I was just wondering if you could say anything about conversations you've had with the National FA, perhaps, about kind of scenario planning for the return to training for grassroots teams and perhaps even competitive fixtures. I realise it's quite a sensitive issue and you might not be able to say too much. There might be very much kind of open thinking at the moment, but anything you can share on that would be appreciated. And just one specific question, and perhaps you might not have the answer for this. For Peckham Town, we've applied for both the Football Foundation funding, and we wanted to apply for the Sport England funding, but it's on the website is closed for applications at the moment. I don't know if you know if it'll be reopened for applications because it's still within the timeline.
Okay, good.
Maybe
So
a bit too specific, that one.
A couple of questions there, Duncan. So the first is the point around the discussions we're having with the FA at the moment on the resumption of the game, and the second is specifically on some of the funding programmes that are open. And I'll just take each of those in turn. So I think on the FA guidance, so you're right, that's a very open topic of discussion with the FA at the moment. They have an internal group which is, essentially copying the professional game. It's kind of Project Restart for grassroots football. And that internal group's made up of a whole range of stakeholders, and there's a number of county FA chief executives on that group and advising, and I'm one of those. So what I'm seeing at the moment is lots of draft documentation that starts to think about guidance for certain sections of the game when the grassroots season can reopen and can restart. Now that goes from guidance very specifically to leagues on how they may reopen their season. It includes guidance to facility operators and a range of other providers. So it's quite an open set of conversations at the moment. The FA and we wouldn't be releasing anything for publication until we've got real clarity from the government about a possible start date for the season. But as soon as we have that, I think our leagues, I think facility providers, our clubs can be reassured that there'll be some quite detailed guidance in place that will give them time to prepare for the season and to get things going. We do at the moment have some guidance on our website, which is essentially the FA's national guidance around the interpretation of the lockdown rules at the moment. So it's very clear on our website at the moment about what is and what isn't allowed. Things like one-to-one coaching between two adults permitted with social distancing, one-to-one coaching between an adult and an under 18 not permitted for safeguarding reasons. So some of these instructions are already in place. And Duncan, I'd just ask that you keep an eye on that section of our website, because as soon as anything's ready for publication, we'd be informing our members and we'd be putting stuff on that website. There is also alongside that quite a detailed bit of guidance being developed by Sport England. So essentially they've been tasked by governments to come up with the guidance around the reopening of grassroots sport more generally, and they'll give some good guidance around, for example, pitch for example, pitch sports, individual sports, etc. So quite a lot of work going on at the moment, Duncan. Keep an eye on the website for any published information there. On your funding programme question, so yes, Sport England have temporarily closed that emergency fund. The reason is they were completely oversubscribed, unsurprisingly. And what they have done is they're essentially working through the applications, and they'll then make a call in the next couple of weeks about whether they can reopen that fund. So again, just keep an eye on that. And I think that the Sport England fund, although it's quite an attractive one because it's quite general for clubs to apply to as part of the COVID issues, there are a number of other funding opportunities, for example, through the Mayor's Office, for example, through London Sport. All of that's on the funding list for our club and league support package on the website. So again, do keep an eye on that because there are other alternative funds that you can apply to, not just the Sport England one. Does that help, Duncan? I hope that comes back to you on the. I hope that comes back to you on those 2 points.
That's great. Thank you,
Paul.
Sorry, Simon's just going to add one word on Duncan's bit, and then I'll come on to the next question.
Through you, Paul. Duncan, I'm very happy separately have a conversation in a Southwark context, but for you and everybody else watching, there may be opportunities to get funding either through some of the funds released through the Mayor's Office and some of the fundings released by boroughs individually or by charities within boroughs. So if you need any help navigating that, if it's London-wide, I suggest they come into Paul and come to the office here. But if people have specific issues in the boroughs where James or Ian or I live, Merton in James's case, Bromley in Ian's case, Southwark in my case, then I'm sure we're happy to sort of support you in digging around to see if there are any funding bids that could be supported there.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to pick up any Southwark ones if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Simon. And I think go through the development at londonfa.com inbox, because that's the one being monitored by Neil Twitchett and Amanda in the development team, who essentially are looking after the club and the league support package. So do that in the first instance and we can pick up on any of those requests. I think I had another question coming in. Was that from yourself, Gavin?
Yeah, Paul, I don't know if you can give us some guidance, because obviously I've done the affiliation and the adults, the vets and the ladies went straight through, no problem. The junior section is being held up on the grounds that, because obviously we have brand new under-7 teams. Obviously all of the clubs are the same in junior football when you develop new teams. We've got 4 new coaches, none of whom, because of COVID, under normal circumstances, we would have met and done the DBS checks and got them all done and up and running, and then they get fast-tracked towards a level 1 course. But obviously, we're not able to do what we can do with the DBS checks because of the COVID situation. And my understanding is there's a special provision for brand new coaches on their qualifications, but I'm not 100% convinced if I'm aware of any dispensation in time limits for DBS, because obviously they can't train with the kids because we're all isolated. Their DBS will go through the system, and we're obviously need some scope to be able to have a license to do those checks remotely. And there needs to be a provision put in, because at the moment we have to sign a declaration to say we've checked those documents. But technically, with the system the way it is, we could do that via these web links whereby someone could upload their documents to us on a shared screen. On this system particularly, you can definitely do that. And there's got to be a way whereby we don't have to go through that legal loophole of manually looking at the documents or them emailing their private data across to us via a scanned email or something for their security. And whether or not the FA are putting anything in place to assist us with that, and or if there is indeed an extension of time for a new coach to get their DBS for the purposes of affiliation, on the grounds that if we're waiting for that, then we're never going to get the youth sections affiliated in time for the leagues to have the affiliation number, because we're not physically going to be able to check their documents.
Yeah, that's a question that's come up a few times. I mean, I think what the FA have done is relaxed the rules somewhat for affiliation. So you can essentially go through the affiliation process without the really stringent safeguarding kind of requirements in place. You can't actually close it off on the system normally unless you've got those things in place. Those have been relaxed. We've had a couple of glitches on the CRM system, so we're just checking that all works smoothly at the moment. But there's been a relaxation of those safeguarding measures for the affiliation process. But what's very important is that those safeguarding measures do need to then get put in place before the start of the season and before any play. So you can get yourself affiliated if you like, but essentially before you actually start playing, those safeguarding measures need to be in place. Now, of course, when you can start playing is when the guidelines are relaxed and we can get back to checking those DBS and verifying them the way we have done before. I think the FA have been a little bit nervous about relaxing the DBS process too much, just because it's a sensitive area in football, you'll understand, and also it can be a little bit tricky to do some of that stuff virtually and be 100% confident that you're verifying it appropriately. So they've relaxed those safeguarding processes for affiliation. But before you start playing the game, again, you'll need to have that stuff in place. That gives clubs a little bit of flexibility. I appreciate that's quite a bit of information. Have a good look at the safeguarding section on our website, because the safeguarding team have put a really good explanation about the whole DBS process and the safeguarding standards on there. So have a good look at that. Good. Thanks everybody for those questions. We've got time, I think, for another couple if anybody have them. Is there anything else that anybody would like to raise? Go on, Jen, if you unmute.
Hi, just going back to the previous bit of the EGM stuff. Are you going to, as one of the measures that you can do, you're going to put in place that we can do virtual voting in future, rather than just having to do postal?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely look at that. I think that the slight challenge, I mean, apart from it not being permitted in the articles, is actually how you verify exactly who is on. I think in this instance where it's video calls and everybody introduced themselves, it was quite straightforward. It's a little bit more challenging when people are joining via conference call, which some people have tonight. So I think we'll definitely look at that. But the reality is, I think that we know that the whole virtual system can work very well. We're certainly seeing it for divisional meetings and committee meetings, and it's something we'd want to encourage a lot of going forward. So I think we'd be quite keen to look at mechanisms for everything to work virtually, not least because it allows us to get around some of these social distancing issues, but at the same time it does things like it saves on venue costs. It also saves on people travelling late at night to certain venues, all of those kind of things. So yeah, we'll definitely be looking at that.
Just quick,
Simon's
quick
just
word
going
to Jen. Jen, I don't think there will be any problem at all at doing having virtual voting for everything except potentially at EGMs and AGMs. So normal council meetings, it absolutely would be perfectly possible. Board meetings, it's permitted anyway under the articles. And probably, and to be absolutely honest, I need to double check, there wouldn't be a problem if it was things not to do with amending our articles. So if it was just seeking, to know what the vote was at the annual general meeting as to whether we should, all go on holiday to Italy actually or something, there would be no problem to do that. The qualification, which is a company law qualification, is to do with things like the amendments of articles and so on. So we'll do a note, but my view, my advice would be let's do it as make it as broad as possible, make postal ballots as broad as possible. The only last point, Paul, is that one of the weaknesses of the postal ballot, it's not an opposition argument because people use it all over the world, is that it doesn't allow people to take into account the debate at the meeting before they vote. The benefit of a virtual vote at the end of a debate is that people have heard the debate. And I know from a meeting I was involved in and voting at a meeting last week that I'm sure the outcome was determined by people listening to the debate and changed during the meeting. And in the end, the expected result didn't happen. And actually, I'm not saying bad result happened, but it was changed by the arguments. So I think we need to be mindful that we want to make sure we try to engage people in the maximum way possible. But absolutely, we'll look at that And we've got a package of things coming down the track anyway for our AGM, which we've already consulted about. We may now need to add some more, which we've never thought about, and we'll obviously open up the conversation with members and with council about those.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. Good. Any final questions? Okay, very good. Well, look, I think, I mean, James has closed off formally the EGM. This is the informal part of the meeting. So it just leaves me to essentially say a couple of things before we finish. So I think the final thing before we finish is a very short tribute to one of our council members. So you all have had this information regarding the really sad passing of Jermaine Wright related to coronavirus. He was obviously an absolutely central part of the Hackney and Leighton League. Very, very close colleague of all of ours, and an extremely sad situation that a tribute is on the website to Jermaine. It's also on the Hackney and Leighton League website. There is a fundraising page for Jermaine if people want to go through that process. But I think I didn't want to close off the EGM without paying tribute to Jermaine. I'm sure many of you knew him very well, as I did. You know, an extremely kind of progressive and forward-thinking and very dedicated person as part of grassroots football. So it's going to be a huge loss for us, and we really did want to recognise Jermaine here. Okay, so having covered that bit, I think it leaves me to say to everybody, thank you very much for joining. I think that this is our first virtual meeting as a group of members. My sense is it's been a very positive experience. I hope it has been for you too, something that we will look to do more of in the future. We may have to do more of, but I think we should do more of in the future. Very much appreciate you all taking up your time and joining us, and thank you very much. I hope you all have an excellent evening.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
Stay safe all. Ciao.